Alright, so I'm at the park again. Seems to be my favorite hangout place. Uh, and I was walking and walking, and I had like a million thoughts going through my head. Um, and I figured why not record them? So, it's funny because I sometimes laugh at myself, and I guess I laugh at everything, really. I laugh at just this idea of this life we're living because you know I like Reddit's one of my favorite places to go get news or just to connect with other people. And I'm in a few of those subreddits that are like about life, the universe, existential crisis, philosophy, all that kind of stuff. And the other day, the same sort of theme came up where somebody posted something and it was like, yeah, I feel like I'm losing my mind or something like that, right? Like I feel like I'm going insane, and it's like, and then he started listing off all these things, and then somebody wrote a comment of, yeah, just don't think. Yeah, you have two options: either stop thinking or go crazy if you want, go mental, go insane. And then I followed up with that, and then I told the person like, hey, I know that this comment might seem like kind of insensitive or kind of, but he he's not trying to be like, it's true what he's saying. Like, I guess what I was trying to say, I was trying to defend that comment because it might come off as snarky or insensitive, like, oh, just don't think, either don't think or go crazy. You can do either or, it doesn't matter. But that's just, to me, that's like just the most simple, plain answer. And so when I go on my walks, I start thinking about stuff, and that is really always the only answer, because there's been so many books. It's funny because a lot of people might consider like enlightened gurus, or people who are in that sort of motivational guru kind of spiritual world that write books and stuff. And it's like, what's funny is that every single person that I've ever heard write a book about that kind of stuff, it's just a flowery, sexier way to say the same thing, to just simply not to think. Like somebody will write a book and it'll be like, book is titled Live in the Moment. And it's like, wow, sounds sexy, live in the moment. And then somebody reads the book and it's like, oh my God, that's right. So I've just been living in the moment. But really what you're doing is just like, it's a nice way of saying don't think. Or like, oh, meditate if you have stress. Well, yeah, again, meditate, don't think, turn off your brain and just go in that flow, because there really is no other answer to any of this. And I've gone through the same cycle, specifically probably the last 10 years, over and over again, and we go through these cycles. See, I was lucky like when I was younger, because I was really motivated by creativity when I was younger. I would say from the time I was from the time I was 16 to the time I was probably 30, I was so obsessed with the idea of creativity. I just wanted to create, whether it was short stories. I used to write a lot of short stories. I used to write a lot of music, whatever it was, or maybe I had a comedy sketch idea. Not that I filmed much of them when I was younger, but so I was just really obsessed with the idea of creating, because in my mind, I thought to myself, I felt just like a mindless chimpanzee with mindless chimpanzee urges. You're born, and then you live your life innocently as a kid. God, you're so innocent as a kid. All you want to do is just play. Talk about living in a moment, not overthinking stuff. And you're just living in a moment, playing with your toys, going outside and playing with your friends. God, there's just such an innocence about it that it kind of breaks my heart. But so then but then you start building this identity around yourself when you become a teenager, and then you get older, and then you're like, what am I? And then, you go through puberty, and then all of a sudden you realize that you have all these urges all of a sudden. Now you're like thinking about sex and girls, and then I realized from a very early age, like in high school, that, so is this what life is? You're just like this ape that just wants to have sex and procreate and spread your seed, and that's it? Because that's what it felt like. Like, I had a very strong feeling that that's what we're doing. And then I looked around, and I looked at everything that people are doing, and it just seems like that's all we're all of our lives are peacocking for the opportunity to have sex and procreate. It's like this mindless, demented urge we have, because it's like programmed into us, because we're like just this thing that's designed to procreate, have sex, and spread your seed to the next generation. And then when I kind of realized these thoughts, like in high school, all my friends saw that I was kind of changing. I started getting into this really dark place. I started distancing myself from people. And my friends at that time were just like, oh, you just need to get laid, bro. You just need to go out there and get laid, man. Like, when I was in high school, everyone's response to everything is like, oh, really? You're all like gloomy? Yeah, you just need to get laid, man. Like, that was always the answer, right? And from my experience in my life, that anything sexual doesn't solve anything for me. That doesn't make me feel manly. It doesn't make me feel cool. It doesn't make that existential stuff go away at all. So for me, that sort of eye candy, or that sort of delusion of that, means nothing to me, because it doesn't do anything for me in that way. So I knew that wasn't the answer for me. So I thought, what else can I do if getting laid is not the answer, and trying to get a amazing job to impress women so I can look sexier and attractive. Now I'm successful, I have a big house. So if none of that drew me in, then what do I do? What do I do? I'm here existing. So then I really secluded into the world of creativity. I spent from the time I was 16 to the time I was 30, I spent most of the time by myself. Like, when I realized how much time I spent by myself from the time I was 16 to the time I was 30, it's kind of crazy. I just went in my own world, and I thought, well, I might as well just try to create stuff, because I figured it was the only thing that made me feel like I wasn't just this mindless ape here to fucking procreate, right? And that was most of my life from 16 to 30. And then when I hit 30, all my friends started getting married and having children. And then I started feeling really alone, because I was like, okay, so from 16 to 30, I was really involved in art and creativity. But after about doing that for that many years, eventually my passion for that died off a little bit. And then I just started kind of like wanting to like go out in the sun, experience the world a bit. Go on walks in the park, see the sun. But, from when I was 16 to 30, seeing the sun meant nothing to me. I could literally lock myself up in a room for months and just work on music or something. It was fine for me. So here I am. I turned 30, and I decide, you know what? I finally want to get myself out there in the world. But then I realized that all my friends have gotten married, and they're starting to have kids. So I basically became invisible to them, because they have a different life. I mean, we tried to make it work. You go over once in a while, but the reality of it just doesn't work. When you start having a family, having kids, that's your world, It's hard to, make time for Tony on the weekends to hang out. It doesn't work out very well. So then I had this sort of realization that, oh man, okay, what's my next step here? So my 30s was a really strange and interesting time for me, because it was kind of felt like a ghost. For my entire 30s, I literally felt like a ghost, because at least from 16 to 30, I had this identity of this creative guy that just likes to seclude himself and is artistic. But then when I turned 30, I was like, I started meditating a lot. The second I stopped with the second my passion for music started weaning off a little bit, and my passion for creativity and creating, because I started getting into meditation. And then when I started getting into meditation, that was a strange experience because, wow, jeez, what do I even say about that? That got me to a place where I just was like, I was meditating and I was meditating, and I felt like this blank awareness. And that's what I'm getting at. That's where this whole conversation is getting at, is when I stopped identifying myself as something. Like, I'm Tony, this creative guy that it's all about art, because, he realizes that, like, like, the human condition is just like, you're this mindless ape that just wants to have sex and procreate. So, like, it's like, I rebelled against that. I'm like, I'm just going to focus on art. So that was like my whole identity, right? But then when I reached my 30s and I started meditating a lot, I didn't identify with anything anymore. And that is a very, very, very strange place to get to, where you literally don't identify with anything anymore. And then on top of that, as I was getting older, now, like, now I'm 41, which is really crazy it's a really crazy thing to realize that you're 41. It's a wild thing. I remember when I turned 40 last year, I was like, wow, I'm 40. That's so weird. So what I've started to notice now, my next chapter, so my 30s, I felt like almost like an invisible person. Because all my good friends that I've had since I was very young, I've had the same group of friends since I was very young. And yeah, they're all married now, they have children, and it's hard to make new friends in your 30s. Everyone's kind of established doing their thing. And literally my entire 30s, I felt like nothing. Because not only did I stop identifying myself as anything, so I literally felt like nothing, but then I felt like nothing to the outside world too, because I had very little connection to anybody, really. So when I was 30, I started going online a lot just to talk to people, because I was just so lonely. So when I hit 30, I just started going online to try to talk to people, and I was literally happy to talk to anybody. I felt so incredibly lonely and invisible that it was almost like I was excited at the idea that there's even an internet. I was thinking, oh my God, thank God there's an internet that I can actually at least reach out to people around the world, talk to anybody. And I did that for many years. I just met a lot of people, talked to them like that. But then that started making me feel kind of sad and empty, because that didn't fill my urge anymore either, because I felt lonely, because I'm talking to people over a screen, but it's just not the same as like being around someone in person. It's just not the same. And I just felt kind of like that kind of started going nowhere too. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'm 40. Yeah, all of my 30s just kind of flew by. Here I am trying to figure out, what am I now? Felt lonely. I feel like I don't identify as nothing anymore. At the same time, I started getting this loneliness of like, hey, I want to talk to somebody, connect with somebody. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'm 40. And then now, my new chapter in my life has been so many different things. One is trying to see if there's any way to find any sort of reasonable balance between this idea of like being nothing and being something. Because like going back to where I started this conversation, this idea of this enlightened guru writing his book about like, be here in a moment, don't think. So it's like all the same version of just don't think, right? Just be here in a moment, kind of like you're nothing. You don't identify as something. Just live every moment as every moment, and whatever it is. But the paradox of that, of course, is that there's always two sides to everything. There's always two sides to every argument. There's always two sides to everything. There's an up and a down, a left and a right, right? So it's like, what is it? Do you just never think? Is that the answer? Never think? Seems kind of silly to me. Do you think all the time? No, seems kind of silly to me. So with everything that I've found is that there's no magic answer to nothing. It's just trying to maybe find some sort of middle ground to all of it. So who am I at this point? Am I Tony? What do I identify? What do I want to identify myself with? Anything? Like at all? You know? What do I identify myself with? And that's where I'm at right now. And then also this notion of realizing I'm in the next chapter of my life where I'm in that next chapter of my life where it's stuff I've never thought about before. When I was younger, I was so self-absorbed with my own creativity, and then in my 30s, I felt like nothing. So it was just like, I don't know what I felt in my 30s. I kind of like meditated a lot, and I sort of like removed myself into a nothingness, which made me kind of lonely in a way. So then I started reaching out to people online to talk to people. Now I'm in my 40s, and I feel myself getting older, and then I feel the people I love getting older. You know, you see your parents getting older, and you see other people around you, and then that's when you start. It's the first time I've started to really feel those things, you know, because I was lucky because I felt so loved as a kid, and I was lucky because that's why, like, a lot of times people get mad at me when, like, why don't you hate that person? That person's such a piece of shit, or like, how can you're like, you know, like, I'll use really extreme examples, like talking about Hitler, and I'm like, Hitler was probably just somebody who just wasn't loved or something. The way I see the world is that, like, I saw from a very early age that, like, the people who weren't loved, you know, you retaliate with that, and you hurt people, you bully people, you kill people. Like, it's not like they're these. So the way I see people is like, if you weren't loved, of course you're going to be an asshole, because you don't know what it is like to be a good person most of the times. You know, you need to feel loved. So for me, now what's miraculous is somebody who never felt love as a kid, who happens to still feel love and feel empathy for people. That's miraculous when somebody's like that. But for me, I was lucky, and felt a lot of love growing up. I always felt loved. But the irony behind that is, you know, you feel incredible love, and you have this close connection, especially with my mom. I have a very close connection with my mom, and it's like you have this incredible close connection to your mom, and you see yourself getting older, and you see her getting older, and you realize that there's a final line to that. I never saw the final line when I was younger, because you're just kind of going along. You don't see the finish line. And I feel like I'm finally in that chapter of my life where I look at myself, I've gotten older, and then I look at my mom, and I see that she's getting older day by day. It's such a straight. And I remember I was talking to a friend, and I was talking to her, and I remember I told her, God, isn't that, how sad is it knowing that like your mom someday will die or something? And then she's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I guess that's sad. And I can just kind of tell by the tone of her voice, like, what do you mean? Like, you seem kind of nonchalant about it. Yeah, no, yeah, I guess it'd be sad. But she goes, yeah, but I think it would be sadder if my cat died. And I remember telling her, like, what do you mean by that? She goes, yeah, I don't know, like, yeah, I love my mom, you know, I love my dad, I love my siblings and stuff, but I don't feel like really that close to them. Like, I love them, but, you know, I think I feel closer to my cat. And then that's when, you know, I obviously realized, oh, right, not everybody's that close to somebody. Sometimes people live their entire life and they're not that close to somebody. But the paradox of that closeness is obviously the closer you are to somebody, like I said, how everything has an opposing side. That's the paradox of everything, right? The closer you are to somebody and the more you love somebody, obviously there's a price to pay for that. Because if you're kind of like somebody, you kind of love somebody, you're kind of like, yeah, you can take it or leave it, you know, if it goes, it goes. But when you really love somebody, I mean, and you're really close to somebody, oh, there's an opposite side to that. And the opposite side to that is when you don't have them someday, whether it's somebody you love, like somebody you're married to, or a boyfriend or girlfriend, or a mother or father, or a child. You know, imagine having a child that dies that you love, you And it's like, so that's the paradox of that. The more you love somebody, oh my God, seeing the finish line of that, realizing that someday that won't be there. And that's the stage I'm at my life. I see the finish line now. And I was too self-absorbed in my own life when I was younger, in my own creativity and stuff, to see the finish line. But now I see the finish line. So in my life now, I'm caught in two worlds. I'm caught in the world of philosophical, existential thought of, what is all of this? What am I doing here? What is the approach to life? It seems like everything's a paradox. Oh, don't think. If you want to be happy, don't think. But you can't just not think. What am I supposed to just remove my brain? It's ridiculous. So there's always both sides to everything. So I'm struggling with that paradox. And then now I'm also struggling with the paradox of seeing the finish line of the people that I love. So now I have two of those that I struggle with on a monthly basis. I go in cycles where I feel okay and I make silly videos dancing around like an idiot, and people look at them and think, God, what the hell is with this dude making these ridiculous videos? And of course, making my silly videos is my way of distracting myself, my way of not thinking, my way of doing something like the way it was when I was writing music, just because at a desperate attempt to keep your sanity, because you can't think about it all the time. So this cycle that I'm in right now, my 40s, what I've realized is like this cycle of like the existential thoughts, the philosophical thoughts, and also the combination of seeing the finish line of the people that I love. So before I was only wrapped in existential thought. Now I have both. Now I have the existential thought mixed in with like this pain and this deep sadness in my stomach of realizing that the people that I love, I can see the finish line to them. So now I'm struggling with two things. It's not like existential thought was not enough, and like the paradox of existence and your approach to making sense of your reality. Now I'm also, it's blended with seeing the finish line of the people I love. So now that's been my new reality for the last 2 years, I find. That's a lot. So that's why I make silly videos. I make silly videos because it's my desperate attempt at trying to distract myself, which is like the whole joke of calling my channel one review a day. Do I make one review a day all the time? No, but it's the idea of like, I'm going to probably need to make one review a day. So to me, like the name of my YouTube channel was almost kind of like a joke. It's kind of like, because it's kind of like, it was almost like laughing at the YouTube culture of like daily uploads and becoming this uploading machine. So it was like, in a way, it was like this sort of like silly laughter at that, but it also in a way it's kind of like, well, yeah, I kind of do need to do that just to distract myself, because it is a distraction, because that's what we're doing, right? We're moving the rock up a hill to save our sanity. So going back to that Reddit comment for the beginning of my discussion about like some guy left a comment saying, hey man, I feel like I'm gonna go insane, and somebody said, yeah man, you either like stop thinking or you go insane. That's the way it is. So everything we're doing, making YouTube videos, daily uploads, not daily uploads, writing music, going to hang out with a friend, we're just trying the best we can to distract ourselves with stuff so we don't think, because there is no answers to these ultimate thoughts. And I'm amazed sometimes. I'm genuinely amazed sometimes that like I always wonder what keeps somebody from completely not going insane, because it's like I see people go insane. They end up in mental hospitals because they've literally gone insane. I guess some people go insane for different reasons, but this life, man, it's sometimes you really do feel like you're just barely hanging on to your sanity. And then it's, it's easy when you just get lost and stuff. Oh, I'm just going to, let me just turn this off right now, make another video, dance around like an idiot, go hang out with a friend, go to a rave, get drunk. You can definitely, there's a million distractions out there, especially in today's age. There's literally a million distractions. But life still continues to happen. We are born here, and we reflect on the fact that we're born here, and we reflect on everything. And no matter how busy you keep yourself, once in a while you still reflect, because you're a human being. And the idea of saying, I just never think about it, I absolutely never think about it, I mean, like I said, Can you really shut off your brain always, all the time? Seems kind of silly to me, but I don't think you realistically can. And here I am right now, thinking about it. And the next time you see me, I might have gone completely mentally insane, or maybe the next time you see me will be me making a silly video, laughing like an idiot, dancing around, trying to distract myself, or maybe you won't see me at all. Maybe like I'll just have this thing of like, oh, I just need to get away from YouTube and just like be by myself. Like that's life. It's a constant surprise. I don't know what the next step is, and neither do you, and neither does anybody. The mystery of life. I'll conclude that video at that now. So I hope no one's going insane right now. I hope everyone's trying to enjoy themselves as much as they can. And if you are a thinker and you like to think, I sure hope you're able to once in a while not think and just have some simple pleasures of life to keep your sanity, and that's it. So have a beautiful day, guys. Bye.